Tonight, the Trump whistleblower scandal and a shifting approach today and over the weekend from this White House, confirming now most of the details of the story, but saying, hey, there's still nothing wrong with it. Many, though, disagreeing. So tonight, we want to know what you think. We're going to open up the phone lines. We're going to let you at home sound off. Then the world's leaders gather at the UN to combat climate change as a 16-year-old girl from Sweden tries to do what our president will not, anything to help. Plus, the Democratic Senate primary taking shape in Massachusetts. So why exactly is Joe Kennedy III taking on a popular incumbent Democratic Senator Ed Markey? Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. We're going to get to all of that in a moment, but what we're going to do is we're first going to focus the first half of our program on the Trump whistleblower scandal. And tonight, what we thought we'd do is give you at home a platform to sound off. Now, we want to get your take on the scandal and what looks like President Trump using our nation's foreign aid to pressure the Prime Minister of Ukraine to dig up or make up some dirt when it comes to another political opponent, this time Joe Biden. How should the Democrats respond? Is it time for impeachment? And a host of other questions. The phone lines are open right now. You see the toll-free number right there on your screen, 888-766-2428. We're going to start taking those calls momentarily, but first, let me give you both the background and where we are with the very latest. President Trump today essentially confirming many of those key details in the case in recent days. It was a call to the leader of Ukraine. Trump did mention foreign aid in that same call 8 times, and he did confirm that aid that was contingent on Ukraine combating corruption over there. All of which sounds pretty bad. But just like throughout this whole Russia investigation and the Mueller probe that followed it, the president's approach now seems to be, hey, yeah, it happened, but nothing wrong with it. In the midst of the ongoing firestorm over the president's controversial call with the Ukrainian president, where he reportedly repeatedly pushed for an investigation into the business dealings of Joe Biden's son, Hunter, today the president still trying to put the focus on the Democratic frontrunner.
What Biden did is a disgrace. What his son did is a disgrace. The son took money from Ukraine. The son took money from China.
None of Trump's allegations have ever been confirmed, and his claims about the Bidens in the Ukraine have been proven false by the Ukrainians. But it's the president himself who's attracting the most scrutiny. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi given the White House until Thursday to turn over the whistleblower complaint as mandated by law. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell saying this is just an effort to politicize the Intelligence Committee's ongoing efforts.
I believe it's extremely important that their work be handled in a secure setting with adequate protections in a bipartisan fashion and based on facts rather than leaks to the press.
But administration sources are saying that the whistleblower has only secondhand knowledge of the call. The president accusing the whistleblower of being a partisan despite claiming to not know who they are, even questioning their patriotism, tweeting, "Who is this so-called whistleblower who doesn't know the correct facts? Is he on the country's side? Where does he come from?" But while attacking the whistleblower's character, the president has not directly disputed any specific reporting on what is alleged in the complaint. Trump says he may release a transcript from the call to clear the air, and sources are saying that some of his closest advisors are discussing just that possibility. And we even got more from the president today. And while he didn't use the word witch hunt, you've heard that one before to describe the Democrats this time around as he tries to deflect from the current scandal, it is clear he's operating out of the same playbook.
How seriously are you taking the impeachment talk?
Not at all seriously. We had a perfect phone call with the president of Ukraine. Everybody knows it. It's just a Democrat witch hunt. Here we go again. They failed with Russia. They failed with recession. They failed with everything. And now they're bringing this up.
Now, the usual suspects of Trump defenders, they hit the airwaves this past weekend looking to defend their commander-in-chief one more time, or just this time, and then they'll do it again. This time, I don't think, at least, there was a lot of success with the spin. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, he was on CNN yesterday, and he seemed to get tripped up in a hypocritical claim. Biden bad, Ivanka, Eric, and Donnie good.
If, for instance, President Obama had pressured a foreign leader, Putin or the president of Ukraine, anyone, and said, I want you to look into Donald Trump Jr., or I want you to look into Eric Trump, international businessmen, both of them. Would you not find that inappropriate?
Again, I'm not going to speculate on that. What I do find is inappropriate is the fact that Vice President Biden at the time's son did very significant business dealings in Ukraine.
So it's okay for Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump to do business all over the world. It's okay for Ivanka Trump to have copyrights approved all over the world while President Trump is president. But while Vice President Biden was vice president, his son shouldn't have been able to do business dealings?
Again, I don't really want to go into more of these details other than to say...
Well, you're just setting a precedent that the president is violating.
Again, I think there's a significant difference in what you're saying.
I really don't see it. But anyway, Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, also had some trouble carrying Trump's water this weekend. And just like it was with his own CNN appearance last week with Chris Cuomo, he backtracked a claim on Ukraine again in a matter of seconds.
Did the president threaten to cut off aid to the Ukraine?
No, that was a false story.
100%.
Well, I can't tell you if it's 100%.
Because
well, yeah, pesky facts. Now, other Republicans gave exactly the kind of responses to questions you'd also expect to hear.
I think this president's been through enough. He's proven he could do the job. And why are people listening to his calls and selectively putting something out for political gain?
I'm all for receiving privileged conversations that our leaders are having with foreign leaders, as long as we're going to get all the conversations that happened between Vice President Biden and the Ukrainians. This has all the hallmarks of the Russia hoax.
I think every president would have a lot to worry about if this phone call is handled the way they're talking about. Can you imagine future presidents having a phone call with a foreign leader and it winds up going to Congress? If that's not an executive privilege moment, I don't know what would be.
But there were some cracks, albeit small ones, in the Republican armor. Mitt Romney, he tweeted out that if the president asked or pressured Ukraine to investigate Biden, quote, it would be troubling in the extreme, end quote. Doesn't sound like much, but Romney would have a vote when it came to impeachment, and one of the men trying to challenge Trump in the Republican primary went way, way further.
He's now acknowledged that in a single phone call, right after he suspended $250 million of military aid to Ukraine, he called up the president of Ukraine and pressed him 8 times to investigate Joe Biden, who the president thinks is going to be running against him. Talk about pressuring a foreign country to interfere with and control a U.S. election. It couldn't be clearer. And that's not just undermining democratic institutions. That is treason. It's treason pure and simple.
Okay, so strong words. Again, that's a Republican, albeit an opponent in a primary. But here's what I want to know, and I want to hear from you with the answer. This toll-free line's open right there on the screen. We'll bring up the number in a second. There it is. Is this just drip, 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 just the latest scandal, doesn't really register? Or do you say, wait a second, we went through this in 2016. No lessons learned. There are no guardrails that we've learned. Certainly there's not a spine in the Senate when it comes to Republicans to actually call balls and strikes here and say this is wrong, regardless of party. Country comes first. Do you believe, with all the politics, the principles, and everything in between, that is it true? If this is true, and there doesn't seem to be denials from the Oval, is it time to talk impeachment? We're going to get your reaction to this story and the latest developments. But first, I want to bring in Andrew Whitman right now. And Andrew, to me, this isn't shocking, which is the biggest indictment of all after 3 years that a president would do something like this. But we've learned a couple things. The other guardrails have seemingly held up from the media, not to give a pat on the back, but the courts have said no on certain things. But it has come down basically, at least in the last year or so, that the Republican Senate sees no evil, hears no evil. And they just want to get to next November elections without ticking off the base. But that said, is this just finally one bridge too far? That this president, there is no thing as shame, there is no such thing as, decency where you don't abuse the office? I mean, we're talking about extortion and bribery. Okay, literally. Yeah. And this is after the whole probe. This is after the Mueller report. This is after everything we learned with Russia. It's like rinse and repeat this time with Ukraine.
And imagine the position the Ukrainians are in. They've got Vladimir Putin with troops in the eastern part of their country right now. We're aiming their guns right at the Ukrainian capital. And they've got Trump to their west basically pressuring them, hey, help us here or we're not going to give you the military aid. And that's, for me, one of the big problems here. Between now and 2020, imagine the pressures the Ukrainian government is going to be under. If they think that Trump is winning, they might give disinformation about Joe Biden just to help Trump because they're betting down that Trump is going to win again. I mean, anything that comes out of Ukraine is going to be, a political flashpoint throughout all this. And now you can't trust the genesis of this. Look, I think this is a step significantly further than anything that we've had before from this president, or really from any president. When he was a private citizen and he was basically asking the Russians to help interfere in the election, that was one thing. But he's using the power and leverage of the United States, including our military power, including our financial power. He's using the power of his office to demand a foreign country take action, specifically to help him on his re-election campaign and throw dirt on his opponents.
People, he's doing it with money that is yours and mine. The $250 million that he withheld, that's our tax dollars. And he's doing it for one reason, not for geopolitics, not for national security. He's doing it because he wants to win the next election with dirt. Here's not the biggest problem of it, but here is maybe the irony. It turns out that Biden told everybody over a couple of years ago, that he told the Ukrainians they weren't going to get the $1 billion in aid if they didn't fire the prosecutor. Reason why? The prosecutor wasn't indicting anybody on corruption in Ukraine. He was fired because he wasn't doing any work. So why exactly would that profit Hunter Biden if he's looking for a more aggressive prosecutor? None of the claims made sense. It was investigated and dismissed. And the Ukrainian president, with all the precedent that Andrew said, he's still saying there's no there. But yet the president says what he says today, and he almost dares people to do anything about it. All right, we come back. I'm going straight to the phone lines and giving you the floor here. You see the question there, and you see the toll-free number. If you haven't joined us, please do. If you find a busy line, I got to try and clear the calls and get you in as soon as I can. What should the Dems do next? Stay with us.